Ladies and gentlemen, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Mr. President, greetings. So, a short introductory word. Okay. Well, today I've had a lot of introductory words, in fact. But I'll start with the word of thanks. Thanks to the representatives of media, to journalists. And I think that what you've done over this year is very important. I'd like to express words of gratitude to these invincible journalists. Really, you've done a lot for the strength of our nations. The armed forces of Ukraine was fighting, the whole people, the citizens of Ukraine was fighting, and you did your own role. The same goes to the representatives of our foreign partners. So I'm confident that you fully recognize what you've done for the victory. All this feeling will come. So big words of gratitude to you for speaking about Ukraine, for the fact that the whole world is not forgetting about Ukraine. This allows us to remain strong, to remain invincible and unbreakable. So this is already a year of invincibility, so big thanks to you. Big words of gratitude to your colleagues that are unfortunately no longer with us because they've died in Ukraine. We have people like that, representatives of your very important profession. So I guess it would be fair to recognize all those people with a minute of silence to those that we all remember. It's important to us. I think it's important to everyone. Now, I think we can start talking. Yes, don't forget to raise your tablets and introduce yourselves when. So, Christian, please, CNN.
Okay. Mr. President, thank you for taking this question. Can we get him down? Mr. President, I'm interested in the timeline. Today, on the anniversary, you spoke to your own forces and you called for victory within this year. You have heard the Western friends, your partners, talk about as long as it takes. You know that the Russian leader believes that time is on his side. Why do you think that it's possible by the end of the year, and how do you assess the meaning of as long as it takes from your Ukrainian perspective?
Thank you for this question. I really want, and I think that every single partner, everyone, will remain strong, will remain just as a fist. If all of our partners are united for the sake of our victory, because that's a victory of values, if all of them will remain committed to their words, to their time frames, and that's not going to be just talking, but we've already shown ourselves as strong partners, and there's evidence to that. So should all of us do this important homework? The bodyguard has... Okay, so if we'll fulfill our tasks, then we'll definitely have this victory. I'm confident that we'll have this victory. So And I hope this will happen this year. We have everything to have it this year. We have France, we have diplomacy, we have you. We have combined everything against this wave of invaders. I think not a single country in the world can withstand on its own something against this war. I think only the United States would be capable to do that, but fortunately they don't have neighbors like that. There's just a couple of countries like that in the world. And Ukraine is facing this war not alone. We have friends. We make sure this aggression, this war would not continue anywhere else. We clearly understand what the Putin wants, what Kremlin wants. We understand what the military political leadership want. So it's important for everyone to focus, to stay working in their own places, and that's it. And then we'll have victory, because the truth, the righteous, is on our side, and the children that we love. And it's so horrible when we are losing them in the battlefield, around the battlefield. But they, Russians, they have countless of victims and casualties. That's their choice. Now, ICTV, Oksana.
Good
afternoon, Mr. President. First, thank you for your example of resilience, invincibility, and belief. We all believe in the victory, but now a lot of international experts are telling that we have a war of exhaustion, and not a single party would have resources to have an victory, clear victory, and then there will be a negotiation. So how do these negotiations look like? What's the ultimate victory for Ukraine looks like? I'm not thinking theoretically about how those negotiations could take place. We make very specific steps. Ukraine has initiated the peace formula at G20, although we would really like to have it G19 and not G20 in the world. So we've briefed everyone on the peace formula, how we see that. And then there's the outcome of what Russia has done here and how it has an impact not only on our security, because there are different crises caused by Russia's aggressive steps. As you know, the occupation of the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, and then the blocking of the sea and all the chains of supply as part of the full security. You know all of those aspects. So what else can I tell you? We've offered the steps, and today we can see some interest in fulfilling this peace formula and supporting that. And I'd like to express words of gratitude to the country, because yesterday, or in fact today night, 41 countries has supported our peace initiative at the General Assembly. So the next step would be to engage as much as possible states for the first summit. I want really this summit to be as much fruitful as possible, so that we would have this summit conducted in a place, in a country that would be able to host as much countries of the world as possible. I'm working with our partners, with the team, in order to make sure that not only the strategic partners that are supporting us from the first days to be there at the Peace Formula Summit. And we're working hard to have representatives from different continents. We're working hard to have Latin America represented at this Global Peace Formula Summit, and so that there would be representatives of the African continent, so they would be engaged in this summit as well. We're also, frankly speaking, I would like to have India, I would like to have China participating. That's true. Our task is to engage as much as possible and to show the whole world that here's the respect to the territorial integrity, to UN Charter, to anyone's right to live. And the more countries will engage, the more support we will have. And we have developed the peace formula in a way which is very democratic. So it's a very clear step. So in order to reduce the risks among the countries supporting us, I mean, any country can support like a single point of this peace formula. They could support a nuclear safety, the environmental safety, and you know how many mines are there around the territory of Ukraine. That's why there is a lot of steps that we've offered. And there is also kind of a step that means the bringing of peace, because we need the security guarantees. And this is something we need, like a security package for Ukraine, for Ukrainians. And already we can see that this is the war that has a very significant impact. So a security guarantees for the whole Europe. So when there is this fulfillment and then there is this respect to the international law and to the ordinary people and to the people of Ukraine. So if that would be fulfilled, then we'll get a diplomatic kind of an end of this war. But until that moment, we need to fulfill all these points of respect. Thank you. Now, the Mexican TV first row, please.
Sorry, Mr. President, you were mentioning the resolution in the United Nations, the more than 140 countries that voted, demanding that Russia forces leave Ukraine immediately and without conditions. What do you say to the countries, the minority, that didn't support that resolution, that voted with Russia against it, or that decided to ignore it?
Ви знаєте, напевно, щоб
Now, in order to understand the war, the consequences and the losses as the result of the war, because you're not only losing the territory, but you're losing people, leaving people. And if you're not at war, if you haven't ever lost anyone, then it's hard for you to understand what's happening. What sort of pain is that for everyone around you? And it's hard to spread this information. And this is why we are working every day in order anyone to understand the consequences of the war, not through having this war, because it's painful, it's a weak position, because you're somewhere there. You're saying that we're not sure that in this way, but in what way? Should you definitely have a war with torturing, with rapes? Should you need to have it in every house of the war so that the people would finally understand the consequences of this bloody war? And then this big sick leadership of this Russian Federation, then there is this journalism to have this information being spread. It's hard to get this information to those countries that are voting against it. But still, we are working. There's 141 countries who voted in favor of that. There is this support to territorial integrity and sovereignty. So there's the answer, how these countries are, what sort of attitude do they have? So there's an answer in this support. Yes, they have to withdraw from your sovereign territory. Now, how do we work with the other countries? We do work. And I believe that Ukraine really needs to make steps forward, like towards the African countries. I think we worked not at a sufficient level. We didn't pay sufficient attention to the African countries. That is why we have a special program initiated by Ukraine. We are increasing the number of embassies in the region, and then look at the Grain from Ukraine initiative and other initiatives on food security. So this is what you need to do. A daily investments in peace. I think we wasted that time for many years since the beginning of our independence, and that is why currently we are fighting for our independence. And that's not a coincidence. We didn't have a strong fist of partners before the war, and that's right. But now we have it. But we're still lacking a number of individuals at this fist of common support. So, and I'm talking about the African continent, the Latin America, it's also very important, and I would really like to have a conference and a meeting, or rather a summit with the Latin American countries and Ukraine, and it's very difficult for me to leave outside of Ukraine, but I would go to this meeting to tell their media, to tell their society, like, I'm ready to step forward. Our diplomats are making this step forwards. We're ready to work round the clock. If we'll get more hours in the daytime, we will do that. So this is how you would need to work 30 years. Unfortunately, it was the war that made us work so effectively, but nobody would have expected something like that out of neighboring country or Russia, that you would have something like that from Russia. There's this just willingness to destroy us completely, utterly. And that's why it's not a correction of mistakes. I'd like to say that I don't have any questions to anyone. I don't want to deal with that part of the past. I'm looking at the future. We need the total support of the war, and we will be victorious. We're working on that. And that dialogue is absolutely fair. This is a dialogue with many countries. We've worked on the unification of the European countries, and there's not only the EU member nations, but other countries, countries with different status, with neutral status, and we've worked in order to change this neutrality into the non-neutral status to war. This is also very important. We worked on this every day, a lot. You have worked on that, and the armed forces have worked on that, because the victories on the battlefield, they gives confidence. Nobody likes losers, however hard it might sound, but that's the truth. Everyone wants to be victorious, and everyone has to work, like inside the country and outside the country. That's the only way to victory.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues, Yalta European Strategy, Sir Jeffrey Nice, do you have a question, maybe? First row.
Do I need a microphone?
Yes, you do.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, those fighting for your country, led by you and you, have put you on moral peaks, not just high ground, from which you can make requests or demands of the Western world, whose methods of accountability for war crimes are unsatisfactory, incomplete, and very, very slow. Will you, for yourselves, and also for us, push for reform of those systems or additions to them that will ensure there can be, because this is in your country's interest, the earliest possible and conclusive determination of where moral right in this war is and where moral wrong is? And supplementary to that, Mr. President, will you consider, to the extent possible, ensuring that accountability mechanisms for war crimes are dealt with by Ukrainians in Ukraine and in the Ukrainian language, remembering that the countries supporting you, if they found themselves in your terrible and unhappy situation, would demand nothing less for themselves? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's a quite complicated one, but actually it had all the answers in it. It is very profound. And I know there are a lot of risks as far as the peace formula is concerned. Regarding the institutions, first let me speak about the tribunal. Everything starts with with political unity. The United Nations platform might not necessarily be a universal one, but there's nothing else that would have more countries that could be politically united. As of now, unfortunately, I don't think there's anything else. And we can support the setting up of the tribunal to hold Russian Federation accountable for war crimes. And we're also working on the mechanism to compensate all the damage caused by Russia on the territory of our country, and to our people. This is a major effort. We're working on it. The diplomats, Office of the President, Mr. Austin, Mr. Yermak, Prosecutor General, the Office of the Prosecutor General, everybody is working hard every day to make sure it is up and running. This is a very sophisticated mechanism. And actually, I have to say that other countries, they are cautious, they are afraid of setting up tribunals. You might understand why that it is. It's a matter of responsibility. But before you go and establish something in your country, you need political will and unification. And UN has been very useful in that respect, because any government, country or leader can receive support to that process, and we're working on that as well. We are convinced that the resolutions will be supported and voted for. We're working with certain countries that we see as crucial for the matters of tribunal. We see them as leaders. This is actually the Netherlands. We're working with Mark Rutte. We're working with Mr. Rishi Sunak from the UK, with other countries as well. We are thinking about the compensation mechanism. There has already been a few steps already, and our Baltic friends are very helpful. And Baltic Trio and Poland, they have been supportive along the way. They are supporting us with everything we ask for. Why is it so hard? Because, well, to address the first part of your question, these institutions that you referred to were set up a long time ago. They haven't been through this type of immense aggression, and this bureaucratic system does not give a clear answer to the question of when the justice will be served, when fairness will happen. And for those who lost their homes, the economy, everything, they want justice now, and it makes sense that they want justice and fairness. We have specific examples. We were working on the matter of prisoners of war, and Andriy in particular, and other colleagues, they were taking a great care to check the condition of the prisoners of war. As you've heard, there have been tortures, and now the Red Cross, it's an international institution, they didn't manage to the prisoners of war to check their condition. Are they hardworking, insisting? No. We were insisting and working hard. We were doing our best, paying immense effort to get our men and women out. But to this day, we do not have access to the prisoners of war. And this year, the year is a year of the full-scale war. But we have to remember that the war began in 2014. And we know that there are 125 Crimean Tatars that are political prisoners. What is happening to them now? I remember early into my presidential term, we were returning people back to Ukraine, some political prisoners. Everybody thought they were held in Moscow, but that wasn't the case. They were very, very far in the regions. And it was only thanks to Ukrainian, to the ombudsman, etc. And we worked with the OSCE way back when there were attempts at the Normandy format, the OSCE had to verify a lot of matters related to the security issues. It was very, very hard. There was a matter of authority of power. And, you know, I am tired to hear one answer from many institutions. They keep saying, we don't have the authority to do it. So no universal mandate, etc., etc. But nonetheless, the UN, headed by Antonio Guterres, well, in us, we became more proactive. Guterres came to Ukraine, and we helped organize the corridor to transport grain with help of Turkey. So being persistent and being committed to change institutions is what helps. Actually, this war helps highlight weaknesses in Ukrainian institutions, in the EU, on the continent in general, and international institutions as well. And how do we change them? A different security infrastructure will emerge after the victory in the war. Somebody from Ukrainian media, LBUA. Thank you. Good afternoon. Mr. President, you mentioned China and its views not very pro-Ukrainian. China came up with its peace plan this week. However, we're seeing some actions by China, not very pro-Ukrainian, and we also heard some allegations that China might be supporting weapons to Russia. So what do you think about China's position? Well, I don't think that was China's peace plan. It was not a declaration or resolution. I think that China spoke its mind about the matter. And I actually said it once before. China started talking about Ukraine, and I think this is a good thing. But it actually begs a question. What will these words be followed with? Because the steps that are to be taken, this is what's important, and what these steps are going to lead to for us. Because he's talking about us, China is talking about us. Territorial integrity. Well, I think what they are saying looks like respect for territorial integrity, doesn't mention the country, but it's our territorial integrity that has been breached. Nuclear security was mentioned as well. I think this is in line with the interests, global interests, and Ukrainian interests. There are some things that make sense to me. There are things that I disagree with. The entire world, I think, disagrees with. But nonetheless, this is at least something. And I think that we would be safe to assume that if there are ideas that are aligned with the idea of respect for international law, territorial integrity, and some security considerations, we need to put that to good use. We need to work on that with China. Why not? Our task is to get everyone together to isolate that somebody. Next question from Azerbaijan. Good evening, dear Mr. President. I'm a journalist from Azerbaijan. What is the support to Ukraine from the post-Soviet countries, from Azerbaijan in particular? What specific steps do you anticipate, and what specific steps are you planning to take in internal and external policy. Mr. President, my son asked to take a selfie with you. Would that be okay? We'll start with what your son has asked, and then we'll discuss the question that you posed. Dear colleagues, but this is a bad example. Please, please don't be doing that. So your question was about my assessment of Azerbaijan's support. Well, actually, the answer is in the question. If an Azerbaijani journalist is asking a question in Ukrainian, that means he has made a choice between Russia and Ukraine. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Regarding President Aliyev, we are in touch with him. We communicate with him. We are grateful for his support that he's extended to Ukraine, and he respects our sovereignty. I think that's priority number one. He has respect for the territorial integrity of Ukraine. He thinks that Crimea is Ukraine. Thank you. Let's talk to this part of the room. NPR, National Public Radio.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me? Oh.
Now yes.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
So General Milley says that you can't achieve your goal of kicking all the Russians out of Ukraine. I wanted to see if you think he's right and what that tells you about continued U.S. support and why.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you for this question. First of all, I know General Milley personally. We had a meeting, and I haven't heard that from him. I respect the opinions and views of the military, especially the partners that have been supporting us, that have been leaders in our support. If General Milley really thinks that, I think I would have heard that before. Secondly, support is everything. So if General Milley
з нашої держави, я думаю, він, а від нього це дуже залежить, він повинен пришвидшити постачання зброї. Мені здається, так повинно бути. Що стосується підтримки в цілому Сполучених Штатів, якщо ви не проти, я додам. Я вважаю, найголовніша відповідь приїзд президента Байдена.
I think the most important was the visit of the President Biden. There's weapons, other things, and it's up to the President and Congress, but first of all, it's support of the public. And I saw that American people, they support us. During my visit to Washington, D.C., I saw people with Ukrainian flags in the street. So I know that the U.S. support is very, very important. And support is weapons, humanitarian assistance, etc., etc. That's one thing. And there's another thing, believing in our victory. And this is what President Biden's visit was about. And President Biden came to us. And General Milley hasn't been here yet. Sky News, Deborah, please.
Thank you very much. Deborah Haynes from Sky News. Do you believe that Ukraine can achieve victory on the battlefield? Or do you believe that ultimately you're going to have to negotiate, maybe even compromise, maybe even talk to Vladimir Putin? And if I may ask a second question, please. Around 20 of NATO's member states have increased their defence spending or made pledges to increase their defence spending following the full-scale invasion of Ukraine last year. Would you like to see all 30 member states increase their defence spending, given the need to continue to support Ukraine? And that does include the UK, which has yet to do that. Thank you.
Дякую за запитання.
Thank you for your question.
Якщо щось забуду, будь ласка, нагадайте мені.
If I forget something, please make sure to remind me.
Дивіться, мені здається, дуже важливий момент. Багато держав.
This important thing. 20 countries is a lot, but there are so many countries around the world who started to increase their defense budget. So this is a complicated matter and requires a complicated answer. There was a previous question, how do you reform institutional security globally? And you are talking about increase in defense budgets. That's the answer. The war in Ukraine gave rise to the resetting. Everybody understood that the systems are not perfect, that we need something more powerful. And I'm not talking about ammunition. There's a lot spent on cybersecurity, information independence, etc., etc. UAVs, IT, cutting-edge technologies. Everybody's clear that there's no cookie-cutter approach. Probably other expenses are increased as well, but bottom line is that what we're seeing now is the security system being reformed, and I think this is the right step to take. And everybody saw what we could expect from the Russian Federation. And this brings us to the idea of compromise and negotiations. And we all saw that nobody ran to buy flowers. Instead, everybody went to buy weapons. Nobody wants to develop business with the Russian Federation. More and more sanctions appear. Sometimes sanctions hurt, but everybody's clear now that they're making you dependent on Russian gas, and if you are that dependent, then you're gonna get cold eventually, because at some point they might start thinking that they want to have their people in your country, they want a part of your territory, and then people realize that we need independence, not just on paper. We need real independence to defend our people, because this is what that one person has done with independent Ukraine, who was a neighbor and even, so to say, a friend yesterday. So this brings me back to the first part of your question. After everybody saw that they kill people, that they torture people, and they're not even trying to hide their attacks. They're talking about nuclear matters. They decided to take Iranian drones and kill civilians. And those civilians did not have guns in their hands. They had their children in their hands. And seeing this picture of the world, do you think we Ukrainians could sit at this to negotiate with all of this? I don't know how to call that. We call this phenomenon Russism. I don't have a better word to put it. So that's the answer. We need to start from scratch. We need to go back to what was violated. Our right to live on our land needs to be respected. Leave our territory, withdraw, stop shelling us, stop killing civilians, stop destroying our infrastructure, energy sector, potable water, stop air strikes on the cities, stop killing dogs, cats, animals, stop burning the forest. So you go ahead and stop doing all of that, and only after that we'll tell you what format will be used to diplomatically put an end to it.
Okay, now the Ukrainian Pravda, please, from this part of the audience. Good afternoon, Roman Krovets, Ukrainska Pravda. I'd like to go back to the major topic of this press conference, that's the year of the war. It's time for some intermediate conclusions, and my question is sort of personal. It's composed of three components. First, can you recall your personal, the most horrible day and the horrible night of the full-scale war? And second, we all humans, we can all make mistakes. Now, what's your biggest mistake over the period of the full-scale war? And third, who, over this period of the full-scale war, among your team, who sort of disappointed you? Thank you. Okay, I'd like to start with the one who disappointed me. Sorry, because who disappointed? All those who left on the 24th of February, all those who left Kiev, all those who were leaving cities and towns, all those who were supposed to fight for the country, who had to take care of the security of this country. So all these people have disappointed me. Now, my largest mistake, I don't know. I think there was some of them, because I'm working from early morning to late night. I'm a living person, and no matter how someone might think of that, so I make choices, so I am convinced that I'm making mistakes from time to time. What's important is that for me not to have any fatal mistakes, because I'm a guarantor of the Constitution, I'm the guarantor of the national security. So what's important is that I won't make any fatal mistakes. Now, with God's help, haven't made any mistakes like that. Now, what was the horrible day, or the horrible night, the most horrible night? Over this year, I think Bucha. What I saw, the moment we've deoccupied Bucha, it was horrible. What we've seen, you know, the devil is not somewhere in the bottom, but he's among us. He's on this land. Now the Japanese company. Now I'd like to ask the colleagues to. To pay respect to their colleagues, so just to ask one question, so please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Adasim. I'm from NHK Japanese TV. There is a G7 summit in Japan in May. Are you considering joining the G7? Because the Japanese only prime minister from G7 countries didn't visit Kyiv yet. So what's the role of the Japan in G summit to accelerate the support to Ukraine? Thank you.
За годину. Дякую за запитання. Значить, що важливо?
Thank you for your question. Now, what's important? We have information will be sensitive. That now, talking about the support that is required to Ukraine and what the G7 is ready to provide to us, there's a significant package of support and some support is coming from Japan. Let me concentrate now on Japan. So I'm very grateful to the Prime Minister. We have a great understanding. He's very straightforward. So, and at a time of war, I have understood the true value of people being straightforward. There's a clear understanding and clear support. I understand the amount of fund that the Prime Minister is going to coordinate with the Parliament. I believe that's the mechanism for your country, that they need to coordinate the support for Ukraine. I don't remember all the details, but I feel this support and those messages that I've received from the G7 countries. Now, I was invited by the Prime Minister to visit Japan. That was earlier. We've received those signals over the diplomatic channels. The Prime Minister of Japan has received multiple invitations to arrive to Ukraine. He accepted one of the invitations, so I don't know when he will come to Ukraine, but we are really looking forward to his visit, because Japan has provided very significant support to Ukraine. I want to assure you of that. And the role of Italy that has played in the EU. And, you know, there's a parallel in Japan playing a role in G7. I think somewhere after the end of this war, we'll be able to talk about this role, because that role is very crucial, it's very positive, and I'm absolutely grateful for this. Now, the CDF, please, in that angle.
Okay. Ulf Schmiese, German television. Mr. President, 1 year ago, you've been the most wanted person worldwide. Now you are traveling sometimes abroad. You give press conferences without an embargo. Well, yeah. What makes you feel safer now? Are you less a target for Putin?
I always thought that Germans have more information about Putin's thoughts than I am, but anyways.
Such questions, sorry. So, anyway.
So what am I doing? My task as the president, as the leader of our country, not to make even an assumption of support to Ukraine being weaker. I think that the unity of the world and maintaining this unity, this is my task. Whether I'm doing that right or wrong, I'm not alone in doing that, but still, there's moments, like in the beginning was a difficult moment, but we've demonstrated that we could have achievements, and I had rough dialogues with many, both official and unofficial, and it was a kind of a moment like that, and then the sun has risen in the ocean, and everyone has seen that we are strong. And it's not just a matter of we are stockpiling weapons, for example, somewhere. No. We need that to survive. We are not fighting. We are struggling for our life. And then there was a different stage. And then it was difficult. And it was fatigue. Well, the beginning of the fatigue. And it's absolutely fair for everyone. Every people has their own questions, challenges, prices, waves of inflation, many other things. The energy crisis, food crisis because of Russia's blocking seaports and doing many other things, causing many crises. And there are ordinary people. There's, you know, some of your thoughts, but then deep in your heart there's the support in Ukraine, to Ukraine. But so on the one hand there's the support to Ukraine, but on the other hand there's your own family. But it's important that everyone to know that this is not our war. We are fighting for all of you. And it's not this war that caused the crisis. It's the Russia that is intentionally causing causing this crisis in order to weaken your support and to blame Ukraine for this crisis. So my task is doing everything possible so that the world support would not be weaker. But I would like to underline that I wasn't alone in doing so. I was working together with the team, with the office of the President, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the Cabinet of Ministers, with everyone, with the Parliament, with everyone. Everyone who wanted to do that. And that is a very important aspect. And then there's this moment when you need to show gratitude to the world for not being alone and for even being gratitude to those countries who at first thought of not supporting you but then supported you. So now the moment has time to show your own words of gratitude, because now these countries have their own challenges. So I wanted to come and to support those people. It's absolutely fair because they done a lot. I don't know how many people were saved by many countries. I mean, Germany has done a lot of contributions, and in the EU, because they've contributed money to the weapons, to the tanks, whether someone might want it or no, or like it or no. That's a fact. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to go and to start a new page for all of us, for our capabilities. Air defense, aircrafts, tanks, long-range weapons. That's my task that I need to discuss one-on-one with the leaders. Now, 1FM, please, at the central row, central aisle.
Good morning, good evening, Mr. President. Thank you for receiving us today. Emmanuel Macron, I'm a journalist from the French news channel BFM TV. Our President, Emmanuel Macron, said a few days ago that he wanted the defeat of Moscow, but without crushing Russia. Do you think it is compatible with a full victory of Ukraine? What do you think about this position? And if I may add a second question, you talked about the worst day of the war for you. What, on the contrary, what's been the victory you've been the most proud of, the most happy about since the beginning of the war? Thank you very much.
Emmanuel.
Now, about Emmanuel. Many countries started to speak about what's going to happen after the defeat. I believe that this is informationally in favor to Ukraine. Now, what's going to be happening after this defeat? And it's important that the faith of the countries and the faith of the societies, because they always sort of get together and they always respond to the atmosphere. So that's a signal to all of us that most of the countries, primarily from Europe, they believe in the victory of Ukraine. And therefore they believe in the defeat of the Moscow. Now the major question, what you said. Now, what's going to happen to the Russia? Do you mean this one? Do you mean that? Well, actually, I don't care what's going to happen to Russia, frankly speaking. They have their own state. They have to think of their own country. If they would be thinking about their own country, there would be no war. If they would be thinking about their own democracy, freedom of speech, democratic reforms, not having slavery, prosperity instead, then it would be a wealthy country, because from the standpoint of natural resources, they're a wealthy state, but that takes time. You need to think of that. And we're currently working, we're currently thinking. So if we're thinking about the development, then we'll have no time thinking about the aggression or whatsoever. Well, how to cope with COVID. Remember, that was a big challenge to everyone in the world, when all the countries, the adequate countries in the world, like they were then thinking what to do to their society. Now, someone else is thinking now, how about I do something against someone? So it's all about their question, their future, their destiny. Now, I don't think of this. I don't want to say that some leaders are mistaken about something. No, everyone has their own point to raise, but I think that the elite, the business, which is sanctioned in a very failing manner, their accounts being blocked, their yachts being blocked by the oligarchs of Russia, their real estate, their business outside of Russia is also being blocked. All of that is something that these wealthy people are not very happy about. They had their children studying abroad, that's their right. Now they're deprived of all this comfort. But what do they have? They have what is left in Russia. Now, do you think they would allow really to have 20 or 40 or more Russias instead of one? Do you think they would be sharing their own business with someone? Do you think they would be happy about everything being blocked abroad and they would be not thinking about how to save their money? You know, we think of many different things. And I think they would be able to cope with that on their own. More pressure, more sanctions, more isolation against Russia. In this case, their elite would think what to do inside of their own country, so that with their own new policy, someone might be willing to negotiate. I mean, we are interested in that. Thank you. Maybe a question in Russian at a TV channel called Freedom. Good afternoon. Ksenia Barvinenko, the channel, there will be a question in Ukrainian, even though that's the Russian channel. A year ago, when we were all shocked with the full-scale war, still everyone was calling upon our Western partners to provide us the aircraft to close the sky above Ukraine. At that point, everyone was telling that it's impossible. Well, the same was about Leopards, but Leopards are already in Ukraine. Now, talking about the aircrafts, there's a lot of debates. We can hear a lot of statements. 3 weeks ago, the US President Joe Biden said that they're not transferring F-16s to Ukraine. And then we're hearing statements from our politicians, from our ministers, that there is already a dialogue and there will be a positive decision for Ukraine. Now, can you explain what's the real situation with the F-16s? When are we going to have them? Maybe if not F-16s, maybe F-22 Raptors or something newer.
The Victory Day, I would like to finish answering the question of the French journalist. The Victory Day is going to be the happiest day for me, and not only for me, but for every Ukrainian. And now to your question. Regarding armaments, there are different types of native weapons that we didn't have, and it's understandable because we're not a member of NATO. And I think it's a great accomplishment that we started receiving the 155mm caliber of artillery, HIMARS. So that was a victorious page in this war. It was very timely and it's very accurate and precise. Armored vehicles, we need them to protect our people. And there are all sorts of armored vehicles, BMPs, BTRs, tanks, and initially nobody even wanted to hear about the tanks. You were right. But then we found a moment, we found a key, and we did something. Last autumn we saw that we are capable to take back our land. The occupation of the Kharkiv region was crucial, as well as Kherson's deoccupation. Without that, we wouldn't have been successful in receiving new types of weapons. I believe nobody in Ukraine couldn't even fathom that we would have Patriots, but now we are receiving help. People believe in us. There's a tank coalition. This is a lengthy, hefty process. This is the only weakness, because time means more people that we lose. And it's horrible to be losing our defenders. So that is why expediting deliveries of weapons, expediting delivery of not only air defense, but counter UAVs technologies, sea drones, etc., and also aircraft. And our partners, they know that we want to use that to protect our sky, to protect our people and our infrastructure. And that is why we started working on it. I had a meeting with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and actually this meeting is an answer to the question whether Ukraine stands the chance of receiving high-level aircraft. The training with the UK is starting. I had a meeting with Polish Prime Minister Mr. Morawiecki today. We are looking into training opportunities. We are negotiating. And there are 3 more European countries that we can receive training and aircraft from. It is also a matter of time because it requires training, but this is what we're looking forward to, comprehensive protection of our sky. Financial Times in the center. In the center, please.
Gillian Ted, Financial Times. A very quick question. You talked about the Chinese peace proposal and welcomed some element of it, but it did not mention at all the withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine. Given the views of the parliamentarians, does that mean the Chinese peace proposal is dead in the water?
Ви сказали, що буде коротке питання.
You said it was going to be a short question. Well, it's only a short question when the answer is short. Well, everywhere, whether it's China, it's very hard to find a short answer. I don't think that what China did was an offer in and of itself. I believe it's only the state on whose territory the war is taking place can do that. So we came up with an offer of our own. We came up with the peace formula. Well, I think it was an important signal that China looks like is going to participate in it. That seemed as their views. As of now, I'm seeing this as a signal only. I don't know what comes next. It depends on the further steps taken. I want to believe that China is going to side with the idea of fair peace and fairness, which is our side. I really want to believe that China is not going to supply weapons to Russia. This is very important. This is priority number 1 for me, and I'm doing my best to prevent that from happening. It is very important for us. Because, you know, it's better the way things are for China now than in Russia's embrace. Because, you know, there's this risk of the Third World War. And only after we see specific steps will we be able to discuss them? So far, I'm just seeing an opinion. The most important is territorial integrity, and territorial integrity implies withdrawal of Russian troops. If it's not there, that means it is not okay with us, the way it is written now. If this is what's implied, that there is no withdrawal of Russian troops. Prime Minister of Sweden, Carl Bildt, no question?
Okay. Thank you. Then next, Anadolu Agency, please, here.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I ask a question in Russian? If Turkish President Erdogan prepared for negotiations in Istanbul, and if Russian President were to wait for you there, would you accept that? Are you from the Turkish television, Turkish news agency in Turkey? I just had a conversation with President Erdogan before our press conference. We had a nice conversation. I expressed my condolences, that this is a tragedy for us as well. And the President reached out to me, and we sent Ukrainian specialists to help with this earthquakes situation. We sent cargo planes. This hurts us too. As a country in war, we perceive this pain as our own. I'm very grateful to President Erdogan for his assistance, with the grain trade matter, with Azov regiment. We managed to return some of the men that could have been executed. It wasn't all of them, but still, President Erdogan has done some things that are very, very useful to Ukraine. And he knows what I think about what you asked about in your question. He knows about my views. I reached out to him and we discussed it even before the war. And I told him, as well as I told that to many other people, I said to him, make sure Putin agrees to sit at the negotiation table. We cannot have a full-scale war happen. And he couldn't do it. But now he thinks he can. But we no longer are able to go for that. It's a different person. Putin, there's nobody to talk to. Ukrainsky Noviny News Agency. Good evening, Mr. President. If I may, I'd like to ask a question about internal matters, internal processes. As we remember, in 2021, the National Defense and Security Council imposed sanctions against 100 Ukrainians, the so-called blacklist, the U.S. blacklist. Those were the people that were sanctioned there. And there were a lot of well-known businessmen, high-ranking officials in that list. But also some people were missing in that list, and they should have been there. In particular, talking about an official, Eduard Stavitsky, now known as Nathan Rosenberg. In 2021, the U.S. Treasury imposed sanctions against him, but unfortunately he's not under sanctions now. And you know what kind of person he is. You know that he's been anti-Ukrainian, he's prosecuted by our Ukrainian law enforcement. So the question is, how can you explain that during the 9th year of the war and 2nd year of the full-scale war, people from Yanukovych circles still have businesses in Ukraine? It is not sanctioned. And one more. Well, just a minute. Let's answer. Let's address this one. First of all, I'm not quite clear who you were talking about. Well, every time the U.S. gave us a list of person-to sanctions, we would mirror that and sanction them. And if the person you're talking about is culpable, then we will correct ourselves, but you have to be clear that we're talking about hundreds of people that were sanctioned. I cannot have information and know about each and every one of them. Well, you could just give me the materials. Bogdanov, who is Bogdanov? Reznikov-Budanov's case. We remember what happened and what didn't happen. You understand what I'm talking about, right? I just wanted to hear from you what happened exactly. Please ask a question. Was there talk of replacing the Minister of Defense, Reznikov? In particular, Mr. Budanov was a candidate, but he wasn't appointed due to some reasons. Well, the reason was that it's only the civilian that has to be a Minister of Defense, but he's military, and so that runs contrary to the law. Did you have a conversation with Reznikov and Budanov about this situation? Well, the decisions that I'm making as a Supreme Commander-in-Chief with regards to the security and defense of our country is something that I do not discuss publicly, some of the decisions. One of those decisions is security situations in some areas of the country and some institutions. I had some ideas. I'm not talking about the ministry specifically, but rather about the infrastructure that is supposed to be providing security. So I was thinking about making them stronger with different approaches. And this was with regards to the border regions of Ukraine and temporarily occupied close to the line of contact, bordering the occupied territories. And this is the context in which I was discussing this matter. Had I wanted to appoint our main intelligence official as a defense minister, we would have done it in line with the Ukrainian legislation, of course. AIK 24, Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding Iran, you reportedly said last week to our Israeli foreign minister that Ukraine and Israel share a common enemy inside Iran, in the Iranian regime. Now, how does Israel help Ukraine in curbing the Iranian military aid to Russia, maybe with intelligence, maybe with know-how, and also, you know, these alleged Israeli strikes on Iranian military infrastructures, do they actually help Ukraine?
Thank you for your question. For a long time during this war, I was really looking forward to Israeli support, not only from the public, but also from their political leadership, from various institutions. It was important. Historically, Ukraine has had amazing relations with Israel, and there were various conversations at different levels with different officials, public and non-public meetings in different formats and in different places. And it was hard to change their position because Israel has quite an uneasy situation with relations with Russia, Syria, etc. But I really want them to be not a mediator, but I really want them to choose a side, Ukrainian side, because I cannot imagine Israel supporting war. Israel is a country that for dozens of years has had war, so I couldn't even fathom that. And I'd like to address what you asked about. I know I have all the answers to the question, but unfortunately I will not be able to share them here. I cannot jeopardize the improvement of Ukraine and Israel relations that has begun. SBS Australia and then SBT Brazil after them.
G'day, Mr. President. Most of your allies have reopened their embassies here in Kyiv. Australia has not, citing security concerns. Would you like to see Australia's ambassador return to Ukraine? And if he does not, will it affect relations between Australia and Ukraine?
Приємно мати справи.
It's so nice to hear a question that you can say yes to.
Наступне, пане президент.
I'll be very happy. Really, I have relations with Australia, and really, they really helped us a lot. And you know, the very important thing, I had big, huge deficit with armed vehicles, and it's very important, yes, moment. And I don't want now to share all information how many we've got from Australia, but anyway, we've got it, and that is great. That's why to shake hand the ambassador of Australia, I'll do it with pleasure. Please come. Come back, but on Bushmaster. We need one more.
Далі, будь ласка, Бразилія.
Brazil.
Mr. President, President Lula is trying to gather countries outside Europe and North America to facilitate, to bring both sides to the negotiation table. Have you talked to him about this proposal? And you know that Brazil is supporting Ukraine in the UN, but has a different approach on sanctions, delivery of weapons and ammunition. What do you expect from Brazil, from another American countries? And when are you going to talk to President Lula? Дякую.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you.
Запрошував президента.
I've sent him invitations to arrive to Ukraine. I'm really looking forward to have a meeting with him. I would really like him to assist me and support me with a platform for conversations with Latin America. I'm really interested in it.
I really appreciate some of the steps of Brazil, really, of supporting us, our territorial integrity and sovereignty. That is for us so important, especially now. Yes, and what I'm just waiting for our meeting, because you know, eyes to eyes, face to face, I will be more understandable, and I think Ukraine will be more understandable. That's it. Thank you.
Now, Vipro from Netherlands, please.
Mr. President, thank you very much. First of all, do you think in your lifetime you will see President Putin inside an international court, for example in The Hague, the international capital of justice? And second, you just met the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, and you talked about the delivery of F-16s. Is it correct, that's what we heard, that Ukrainian pilots will be trained to fly on the F-16s, for example, by the Netherlands?
Well, it appears that both the first and the second question, it all depends on Mark Rutte. I mean, the situation in Hague and the possibility of providing us with aircraft. So, I believe that it's important for Ukraine that we have a very good personal relations with Mark. We have a very good relationship with Mark Rutte. So it's good for Ukraine. Thank you. Okay, we can proceed. But looking at what you've said in the very beginning, yes, it's important to, well, to settle this matter with the accountability, with justice till the very end. I mean, having killed so many people, so many civilians, so you can't just have the situation at a stop, as we can see from different political proposals, like searching for a way out. Look, there are so many people being killed, and here is this leader of Russia, leader of a great country, and they have to take responsibility. I mean, it's not a child. It's not a child who broke something and you can simply forgive that. And I think then there is the different age when you need to be responsible for the crimes committed, to stand trial. Because, you know, there is a room for jokes, and that's something you would like to watch with popcorn, but that's only if that would be funny. But that's a tragedy. There's so many people, civilians killed, and that is why you would need to take responsibility for what was done, and I sincerely hope there would be this responsibility.
This photo, these are the sunflowers of the location where MH17 was down in Ukraine. As you know, many Dutch people were on board of that plane, as other nationalities. Have we got a common goal to get President Putin in front of judges, because Dutch investigations found out that President Putin decided to down MH17, as he has decided to go into your country. And the Dutch photographer wanted to give you this photo of the sunflowers on that location of MH17.
Please keep your photo, and we'll take it after the press conference.
No.
After the press conference, please.
But I know, you know, I had so many different presidents from different countries, and always they said, our bodyguards or Sergei, they said after, and you will see something after, but I didn't see yet. You know, that's always like this. So thank you that you showed me. I will remember. I will remember it. Yeah. Що стосується, послухайте, в чому сила, я вважаю,
main strength of Rutte
в чому сила вашої системи,
and your
і в
system,
чому сила результату,
and what's the strengths of the results and the outcomes and the court rulings. I believe that Hague and Netherlands and Mark, this is something we've talked about today, that the justice, it's very hard to have it. But what's important is that Netherlands always gets things done till the very end, just as it was with MH17. So I hope the same would be with the war, that we together will have this case ethics, towards the court, towards the fair court ruling. Now from Spain, and while you are waiting for the microphone, it's getting darker. Now, and different countries are now illuminating their buildings, and we can see Madrid, while they will have questions from Spain.
I would like you to comment on the Spanish support that yesterday our Prime Minister promised that maybe he will send 10 tanks, or he will consider sending 10. And which role can Spain play in your goal to get closer to Latin America? Thank you.
Yesterday. Was it yesterday? Was that yesterday that we had a meeting with Pedro? Oh, it was yesterday, indeed. So yesterday we had a meeting with Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain. First and foremost, I want to say that we had a lot of skepticism in Europe, and that's correct in terms of our candidacy. And we met Pedro, he met Ukraine, he got accustomed with Ukraine. So Ukrainians played a great role. He saw our country, he saw what we are fighting for, he saw the way we're changing. What's important that he saw that institutionally we were running in parallel. I mean, everyone has continued to work. All the banking institutions, the rest of the institutions still working despite the war. And I think it's great that he came in April. He was among the first leaders to arrive to Ukraine. So we found the relationship through him. And I think that the Spanish society has understood Ukraine better through him as well. And then there was this attitude of your society towards our internally displaced persons, refugees. If I'm not mistaken, there's 165,000 Ukrainians currently hosted in Spain, and that's a lot of people. He understands what we are fighting for. He supports us in the EU, and I know that he's supporting us in the security matters within the NATO. And from what I can see, that Pedro Sanchez, we've already established some personal connections with him. He said that we will help. He said that about increasing the number of tanks, and I think that's his authority to say how much more tanks he can get for Ukraine. We talked about other equipment for Ukraine. We are grateful because we had some previous conversations about Hawks. That's the air defense systems that we were supposed to receive, then some other gear and ammunition to reinforce the capabilities of our forces. So that's something that we have. Then NBC, please.
Thank you, President Zelensky. Last week, the president of Poland had said that if this war is still going on 1 year from today, there is a real danger that an empowered Russia will invade another state. Given how effectively you have held back a Russian advance with NATO's help here in Ukraine, is it even conceivable that Russia could invade another state, particularly a NATO state?
На жаль, так.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, I believe it's possible. And that might happen. Why? I can give you an explanation. President Putin needs to demonstrate successes and victories. So there is not going to be a success on the battlefield in Ukraine, and he will not succeed with the massive revenge in Ukraine. So he would need to demonstrate success, and everyone understands that he can have success in weak areas, and better it would be countries that was under the influence of Moscow before the war. or during the Soviet times, and it's better to have some sort of conflicts or maybe some sort of
Відбувається. І тут Молдова, ви знаєте приклад Молдови.
You know the examples of Moldova. You know that our intelligence have intercepted the documents, and I openly, publicly told this. I brought this information to the EU. I have provided that. Well, the moment I have received this information, I transferred that information to the President Mayassandu, and there's evidences that they wanted to replace the leadership of the country. Now, let's think how they can do that. How? I mean, they don't have common borders with Moldova. That means there would be an amphibious operation. That means an attack from the Transnistria or the attack of the Chisinau. So that's something that is happening, and they might be doing that. They might be developing this direction, because I don't remember when was the meeting. It was on the 10th of February. There was the meeting in Brussels. Now then, that's the end of. Now we have this end of February. That's the 24th. So it took them 2 weeks to find a different informational attack. So now they're saying that the situation at the borders, along the contact line between the Transnistria and Ukraine. Now, at this area, they're saying that there's some misunderstandings, some shots being fired, and they're saying through the media that Ukraine is planning to go to Transnistria. Why? Because they clearly understand that we respect the territorial integrity of Moldova. And we believe that the territory of Transnistria is, in fact, the territory of the independent country of Moldova. And they keep provoking us. From the very beginning of the war, we had some shots fired from Transnistria, and they wanted us to go there. And I told Moldova to think about this and to how to settle this issue, because that was a very difficult situation. That was in the beginning of the war. They tried to provoke from different sides. There was informational hybrid war and steps being made like that. So I think that Russia will try to have at least some sort of success. Look, a missile crossed the airspace of Romania. You know that, and then that missile hit the Ukrainian territory. So they will keep on doing steps like that, I mean Russians. And it's better to prevent such capabilities through sanctions and through making any other steps. We have a question, maybe from this area. We have a question from Romanian National TV.
Mr. President,
wait for your microphone,
Mr. President, if after a year of war, even more, you may feel that solidarity in other countries may be diminishing, can be tiring. What is your message to them? Thank you, Mr. President.
Який меседж? Складно говорити про зменшення підтримки України.
It's hard to talk about diminishing support for Ukraine when you keep showing everything in yellow and blue in different parts of the world, and I'm very grateful for this. You can't reduce steps like that or diminish steps like that. You can't diminish work that you're doing, and of course you should not reduce the support to Ukraine. What I'd like to tell your societies, maybe you learned more about people from Ukraine, because you've hosted a lot of people who were forced to leave, primarily women and children, and I believe you understand that. The majority of them, they're willing to return, and by helping Ukraine, you're helping all of them. Now, if you will reduce that support, that's your support, that's the support of your integrity, of your sovereignty. Just now we told you that a missile crossed your airspace, but you're a NATO member nation. Now, God forbid this missile will hit your territory, what the NATO will do? They will have to select what to do. Should they preserve the unity in NATO and show the strength, or no. Now, they would need to show the strengths, they would need to search for the response options, different ones. I'm not deciding that. We're not a NATO member nation. But I want my voice to be heard not by the NATO member nations, but the societies of these countries. These people, the ordinary people. Ukraine has no right to fall just for the sake of preserving or defending the European continent from the horrible war. Because I believe that Russia may proceed with its actions. Now, look at the countries where they would like to have like an influence, just like it was during the Soviet times. Where did they have their KGB? Where did they have their armed forces being deployed? Now, let's analyze where they might be happening, and you will understand that this will be a chaos. We cannot let this happen. Now let's have a question from Suspilne, please.
Thank you
for this possibility. Mr. President, surely you know that thousands of Ukrainian children have been abducted and deported from the occupied territory, from the destroyed cities. And this is an unprecedented situation when so many children have been abducted. And they were forcibly kept in the boarding houses, boarding facilities. So I have a very simple question. How and when we will return those children? Are we making some steps now? What can we do with the help of the international organizations and our partners?
Thank you. We cannot take the children back by force because we cannot enter the territory of Russian Federation. No global institutions can do that by force either. They cannot do it either because they don't have a mandate or because Russia doesn't want to let them in. So what we can do, we can exert pressure. There's going to be United for Justice conference in Lviv, and there will be prosecutor Han invited high-ranking leaders, prosecutors, international organizations, and different solutions are going to be discussed. Sexual violence tribunals, kidnapping of children, crime of aggression, etc., environmental matters. So that's one line of work. Secondly, our ombudsman is working. We have a coordination center that is working. It's very hard. Russians think that they didn't steal anyone. They believe that they provided shelter for those who were fleeing Nazis. The children will return home, and there will be accountability for what was done. So that's it at the moment. We are talking to the leaders about it. It is important that this matter has become one of the most important in the agenda. It is being discussed with leaders in the European Union, and I'm convinced that the more we bring it up, the more we'll be able to locate those families, the places where our children are, the higher the chances that this helps. This is not just a clear path, a clear plan. The only thing that is certain is that we need to deoccupy our land. I don't think we'll be able to return 100% of the children as of now. But after our victory, the children have to come back home. ABC.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Mr. President, opinion polls in the United States are suggesting that a growing number of Americans believe that the US is giving too much support to Ukraine. What would your message be on the anniversary to those Americans? Thank you.
I would like to thank the American people. I would like to thank all of the American people that are supporting Ukraine, the Congress, the President, the TV channels, the journalists, and everyone that has been supporting us. And that percentage of Americans, as you've mentioned, is increasing. I can tell them only one thing. If they do not change their opinion, if they do not understand us, if they do not support Ukraine, they will lose NATO, they will lose the clout of the United States, they will lose the leadership position that they are enjoying in the world, that they are enjoying for a very fair reason, and they will lose the support of the country with 40 million of population, with millions of children. Are American children any different than ours? Don't Americans enjoy the same things as we do? I don't think we're that different. And I'm actually very happy that we have bipartisan support, but we keep hearing those messages from time to time, and they're dangerous. There are political leaders that are elected by people, and if this issue is raised, those political leaders need to be responsible and cautious because people are looking at them. Who wants a Third World War? Would anyone Would anyone be willing to accept that risk? The U.S. is never going to give up on the NATO member states. If it happens so that Ukraine, due to various opinions and weakening and depleting of assistance, loses, Russia is going to enter Baltic states, NATO member states, and then the U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight. Because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing. I wish peace and Ukrainian support to the United States. TV4, Sweden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Anders Kraft from Swedish TV4. Thank you for your hospitality. The people here are very nice. It's my first time in Ukraine. Today, Sweden decided to donate or send more tanks and more military aid, including Leopard tanks. Do you have a special message, something for my viewers, the Swedes, today?
I would like to thank them. I would like to thank them. Genuinely, I'm very grateful to Sweden. This is a very powerful aid package. We are enjoying amazing relations with Sweden, with the Swedish leadership at various levels. And we have some very high-quality meetings and negotiations, and there was a very good visit of the Prime Minister, and we are about to reach a very important decision. And it's hard work, so I wouldn't want to give details of it now because we all need to prepare for that properly. But there's one thing I would like to say. You're doing a great job. It's a great decision that you made to become NATO members. And as you know, Putin managed to unite a lot of countries, people in those countries. And I'm very happy for you. I'm very happy for Finland because it all means NATO becoming stronger. And NATO becoming stronger is not about stronger armies. It's about better security. So that is why we want to be a member of the alliance. We want to be protected. We want to be helping others. It's about collective security. So I'm very happy. There are some things to work on, and I'll be honest with you. You have to know that Ukraine is also helping Sweden. Thank you. South Korea, JTBC, if I'm pronouncing correctly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Hong, JTBC from South Korea, and I have one question. Recently, NATO Secretary General urged South Korea to allow direct armed support to Ukraine. Has the Ukraine government asked South Korea for direct armed support, and can you tell me why?
Well, it would be a great thing if there's direct supplies of weapons to us. We would welcome that. We actually invited the leadership of South Korea to come to Ukraine. We were working on a visit of our Prime Minister to South Korea. This was at the time when it was very hard for me to leave the country. We are very much interested in our relations.
That is very important for us, and I think that we can continue it, and that's it. What can I say? There are some details what we discussed with other countries about your great country, and I hope that you will find possibilities to help Ukraine. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rada TV channel. Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, thank you for being with us throughout this year. Very often we hear since the onset of the full-scale war some public forecasts, some information about critical moments, turning points. I don't think that these are the terms and concepts that are used at the Supreme Commander's HQ. But I have to ask a question. What are the odds of physically returning Crimea back to Ukraine? And what would be the reintegration solutions for Crimea that hasn't been with us since 2014. Everyone in Ukraine really wants the next step to be the final one, the victorious one. And very often someone gets emotional when talking to the media, even governmental officials of different levels. They sometimes say that in some time this and that is going to happen. Why? Because everybody wants it to happen. Everybody wants to bring back all of our territories. Well, We're all human beings. Sometimes these are mistakes, but we want the victory so bad because we deserve it. We really want the war to be over. We really want peace. We really want to return everything, to return our people, to bring our people back. This is what we want. We want our military, our defenders to come back alive. We want life to return to Ukraine. It is not enough. Emotions do not suffice. Emotional statements are not enough. So regarding steps to be taken, there's only one thing that I can say. It all depends on us, and I'm grateful to you for being here throughout this year. And it all depends on us. There are military steps to be taken, and we are getting ready. We are ready in spirit, and we are getting ready as far as weapons are concerned, as far as forming brigades, attack brigades are concerned. We are sending different people to train, not only in Ukraine, we're sending people to train in other countries because there are different weapons and we need to be ready. And there will be fair deoccupation steps and measures, and we can only hope that they succeed. BC, please. First row.
Mr. President, you've made clear your belief that you can win the war this year. You've been clear about the importance of support and the speed at which it arrives. I wonder if in a year's time that victory doesn't arrive and you host a similar meeting like this, what do you think the most likely reason for that lack of victory would be? And if I could respectfully ask you to answer in English, I'd be very grateful. Dziękuję.
No, I can. But what the question was? What about if we can't? I mean that if we can't win.
If victory hasn't arrived for you by this time next year, what do you think the most likely reason for that would be?
Okay, so the most important thing that the unity, that's true, because in the unity there is a huge support or weak support. Anyway, I mean that is really point number one. If we will not have enough number of West kind troops, enough weapon, ammunition, if we will not have, of course, we'll lose a lot of people. And if we will be losing a lot of people, we'll lose, moral situation, yes? And it will be another challenge for our country. We will not be so strong in the country, in Ukraine. And that is the biggest problem, what can be. I don't want to think about it. That is the problem. If we'll meet on the 24th next year, 24th of February, and we'll be at the same position where we are now, that is dramatic moment. I don't want to think about it. And you forget all your words. We have to be sure together. We are partners. You are from Britain. Da. I see. I see. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll win.
Далі запитання, будь ласка, від...
Where our aircraft's Typhoon? Please ask my friend Rishi.
Далі від китайських журналістів запитання, будь ласка,
Chinese journalist Felix Satellite.
Mr. President, so you said that you appreciate being straightforward, so let me be straightforward. So I think right now, both Ukraine and Russia needs as many countries as possible to stand on its side. So how do you convince the countries that geopolitically a bit remote from Ukraine, for example, China, for example, South Africa, India, to be actually on your side?
Скажи мені, будь ласка, Сергій, я вже погано чую. Що було
Є країни, які геополітично віддали.
There are countries that are geopolitically far from Ukraine.
І Південна Африка. Що плануєте?
And South Africa. So what can you tell them? How do you encourage them to side with us? First of all, I plan to meet with Xi Jinping, and I think that would be useful to our countries and to global security. We have we have a significant commodities turnover, trade with China. And, we are the countries that are interested in preserving our economic relations. As far as I know, China respects territorial integrity, historic territorial integrity, which means that China needs to do its best to make sure that Russian Federation withdraws from our territory, because that's what respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty is. Would you agree with me?
Yes? It's great. It's very good, soft step forward. І це дуже важливо, що ми одне одного розуміємо.
And it's great that we are on the same page. You see, I'm already starting public diplomatic relations here. I think live people cannot be killed. Would you agree with me? Living people cannot be killed. Civilians cannot be killed. Would you agree with me? I believe that a nuclear power plant cannot be occupied. It is dangerous for the entire world. Would China agree with that?
Can you see that China agree? І я вважаю, що
And I believe that we need to respect international law and UN treaty. This suggests that China supports Ukraine's peace formula. Would you agree with that?
You see, we have so many common issues. We have to speak between us without somebody else.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Давайте далі запитання від Аргентини.
Let's have a question from Argentina then. Maybe the journalist will say that this country is also politically distant from Ukraine. We'll see.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask for a selfie, but maybe an exclusive interview would be great. Could be after
We'll discuss it later.
It has been said many times that this is a war not only about territory, but about two different ways of understanding the war. It's a war of values. Taking into account this difference, in which place do you think, in which place do you place the countries of South America, taking into account that Argentina, Venezuela, Mexico, they have some roots or sub-bounds with Russia. And this, I'm talking about the government, not the people, which is completely different. So this is my question. In which of these two ways of understanding the war do you place our countries? And if there is any specific support that you will expect from us? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I have answered partially the questions on South America. We are interested in having relations, in understanding what exactly is happening in Ukraine. The Russian Federation has made a large informational campaign on the territory of Latin American countries based on their previous bounds. We are interested in you learning the true information. We have shared values. I don't want to repeat about this. We need to talk, really. We need to talk, and Ukraine has to talk to all the countries now, to all the countries that are not willing to support the destruction of the territories, the destruction of the states. We have to talk, because we're all interested in global security, because there are so many natural challenges. You can see what's happening around us, and therefore we have to think how to preserve the humans, the environment, the planet for our new generations, but we shouldn't think of how to occupy, how to make aggressive steps, how to wage wars, and how to create war and create military conflicts. So at this point, we are on the safe side. Same side. I just want us to know one another. We are lacking the embassies. Unfortunately, we weren't represented at all the continents that we talk about now so much. And we talk a lot, and this is not a coincidence. And answering your question, what role, what priority role is played? We believe you as equals. We treat you as equals. We treat you as countries that have a priority in terms of the relationship and building relationship. We can think not only about the security, we can also talk about things that are so much important to your business, to your people, anything that you might be economically interested in. Now the question from Reuters. I think it's in the other corner. Please. Max Gunder from Reuters. Currently, the United States still have not provided Ukraine with long-range weapons like ATACMS that Ukraine have requested. Now, does that make the deoccupation more complicated this year? Thank you for this question. I had a very frank conversation with the United States and with the EU countries, and that's one of the reasons for me to go to the EU and to UK and to the United States. Now, they know. You know, it's hard to kind of realize, based on the informational space, what was in Kherson, what was the deoccupation steps, why or where did they redeploy this 40,000 men, why the East has become reinforced. They don't know all these details, that the enemy was running. We were pressing them hard. We were making them retreat from one bank to another bank, and now they're deploying the weaponry on the other bank and hitting our civilians. And we have to keep on saying and explaining that long-range weapons is about the protection of our civilians, because many partners, they have their own kind of thoughts in terms of supplying ATACMS and such powerful weapons. And by the way, we've agreed with the UK. A different kind, but still it's a long-range weaponry, and we had to work a lot, because there's different kind of realization in terms of Ukraine needs long-range weapons to fight or to hit targets on the territory of Russia. And there's, thanks to Telegram channels, there's different sources of information. There are institutions that represented many countries around the world. I don't know why this is happening. In some cases, that's an informational policy of Russia, like a wave of disinformation or misinformation. Now, in some cases, that's internal fears that Ukraine could not be provided with F-16 ATACMS or others, because Ukraine would be hitting targets at on the territory of Russian Federation. But I want to tell you publicly now, we are working hard so that people have understood that Russia has deployed their weaponry specifically at these a certain range on the occupied territory in order to kill civilian population. Now we need to hit those targets and defend our territory and defend our people, to hit the weapons of Russians that are currently located on the territory of Ukraine. We are protecting our own population. We have Kherson. I've explained a lot. I've talked about the banks, I talked about the details, the streets, the amount of population. That's a wonderful city with a population of over 500,000 before the invasion. And then when we deoccupied and the people were happy, there were only 85,000 people. Only 85,000. Someone was forcibly deported, others were killed. We found graves, someone left the country, and when we've deoccupied in a week, a couple of thousand people have returned. Like what Russia has done, they've deployed weapons on our territory and started firing from the other bank of the river Dnieper, knowing that our weapons would not be able to hit them, and they were killing civilians. And now there's people being killed, and so the people were leaving the city. And where are they heating? They're heating bus stations, electricity, potable water supplies, gas supply pipelines. That's what's happening. I mean, you try to go to the hospital, they're heating hospitals and schools. So that's what happened. And it's hard to find information like that. So even if you be reading things like that, you know how many spams are there in addition to the correct information. That's why any person, different leaders, they're reading, they get reports from intelligence, but still, I mean, you can trust that or not. You need an emotion as well. People would need to understand this, and they would need to receive true information from Ukraine. So that's why we need to talk to Africa, to Latin America on different matters, and really we need to talk to US, to EU, so that we would be provided with long-range weaponry. This is a challenge. Another bigger challenge is the aircrafts, but we need to exert pressure. We need to keep on talking. Thank you. Now the fifth channel. Mr. President, thank you for having a chance to have this question by the fifth channel. We were disconnected from the news environment. We're not allowed to operate. But when US and NATO were warning about full-scale war, you called upon Ukrainians to not listen to the provocation. Now, do you kind of rethink that shouldn't be the case? And do you think that it was your personal mistake that the citizens were not well prepared for this war? And what could be the punishment for the ex-head of the Security Service of Ukraine and your friend Ivan Bakanov? Do you think he's in Ukraine? And do you agree that because of FSSU? Thank you for report. It was good. I thought I was here on the 24th of February. I wasn't going anywhere. And I think that's important, that we have not lost the country. And yes, it's thanks to the people of Ukraine, and that's thanks to the armed forces of Ukraine, and I guess that's thanks to me as well, a bit. Well, that's many people think so. I'm not a hero, but at least I've done something since we're here in the deoccupied Kiev, in many of the deoccupied cities of our country. Maybe I did something. We have NATO weaponry, and we are fighting, and we're not signing any treacherous agreements like Minsk agreements or whatsoever. Well, that might be not something that is comfortable for you to hear, but I'm grateful for your presence. It's great. And I know that you will be here still. You will still work. That's wonderful. But what's the essence? That we will win. Well, no matter what president, what sort of president do you have? I mean, with the former president, you did not win. So I'm grateful to the journalists, to soldiers, to journalists. And it's good that you're on TV, and it's good that despite different accusations that I'm a president of Ukraine, that I have destroyed the Russian presence in the Ukrainian parliament, I have destroyed the Russian channels in Ukraine, and I have destroyed the oligarchs. I'm sorry, but one of those oligarchs is the owner of your country, of your channel. Apologize, of your channel. Let's have the next question from the Latvian channel, please.
Thank
you.
Mr. President, we in the Baltic states and in Latvia, of course, totally understand that Ukraine is fighting also for us, and we are really thankful and appreciate that. But you also mentioned that Russia might be interested in to attack NATO member states. So after all this very extremely difficult year and bearing in mind all your experience, what would you advise to the Baltic states how to live in this time? Despite that we are NATO member states, EU country, but still we are bordering Russia and we have been threatened all of the time. Thank you.
From the first day, thank you very much. I really appreciate for all that support the Baltic countries gave to Ukraine, and you know that from the first days of occupation and even before it, we had such important conversations and decisions from all the Baltic countries. Especially, I had meetings with Gitanas Nausėda, the president of Litva, and Lithuanian president, and with Latvia we have, and Estonia. All the countries are on our side from the very, very beginning. And when I'm speaking about the very beginning, we are speaking about 2014. So it's so important that we have such friends, strategic friends, really warm friends, real friends. That is important. And what can I recommend? We always, Ukrainian, will remember all that support you've done. And of course, we'll be together with you. And I wish you peace. And we'll stay strong. And I know that you will never be alone. All your people, all your great nation. Somebody said that Baltic countries, small countries, maybe small country, but very big and great nation. Thank you so much.
Дякую від польських питання, будь ласка, від ТВП.
Now the question from the Polish colleagues from TVP. And if possible, could you please change the system for hearing the interpretation? Two brief questions. You have a peace formula. We already know that, and that this is our conditions for talks with Russia. But we know that Russia is not willing to respond to that. Now, how far do you need to go in order to make Russia sit at the negotiations table? Or the only way is to make Russians withdraw their forces? Or maybe, I don't know, have Ukrainian tanks in Moscow. And since we have television colleagues from many countries, there are people waiting for the safe skies in Ukraine. So Germany, Romania, Poland, UK, Spain. Now, what would you tell? Any message you would like to address to the Ukrainians, to refugees staying in those countries, since we have so many journalists from those countries? Well, in the beginning, you said about negotiations. I think that under current conditions, that's something we've already talked about this. But still, we need to be strong. And in order to be strong in any negotiations, Ukraine needs to be strong on the battlefield. Now, in these cases, you can reach a fair peace under conditions of a civilized world. And I think that's the most important. If you retreat, if you are occupied, if you are diminished, and that's what Russia has done by reaching Kiev when they've occupied a part of our country. And you've seen their response. They've provided ultimatums. They were torturing people. So we know the result when they're strong and when we are occupied. That is why I think that it's important to be strong on the battlefield, that you will have a strong position on the negotiations. So let's reach that step. Let's deoccupy as much as possible. This is very important to us. We will be stronger. That's first. Now, the second part. Now, what can I tell to our Ukrainian fellow citizens, since we have so many journalists from different countries in this room? Something's happening. Okay, so
без громадян України, які сьогодні знаходяться за кордоном,
without the citizens of Ukraine that are currently located abroad, our country cannot be powerful. Without you, fellow Ukrainians, with all the love with all the words of gratitude to all those countries that are hosting you. Remember that you are Ukrainians. You're not Romanians, nor Polish, nor Germans. Now, with all the words of gratitude to those countries that are hosting you, they've done a lot. They're supporting you. But I want you to know,
коли ви зможете, я б дуже хотів, щоб ви повернулися.
You'll be ready, when you'll be able. I would really like you to return. I'm not calling upon you right now to return. That's your security, that's your choice, that's your safety. But I want you to know that you're the very same Ukrainians as everyone. We are waiting for the return of the normal life. So please return, because we need to rebuild our wonderful country, because that country is built for all the people, for all those who are currently fighting and defending our country, and for all those who had to leave temporarily. Ukrainians, well, they are forever Ukrainians, even though they left the country for some time. Now, this is almost the end of the press conference. We still can take two questions. So let's have one from Obozrevатель and Ukraina. Thank you for the possibility to ask this question. The question on the security guarantees that we've touched upon earlier. Just recently, Andriy Yermak said that we're about to have the security agreements, security guarantees, and Rishi Sunak said that hopefully they could be approved by July. And what are other countries considering the approval of the security guarantees? Anyone before the war and after the war?
Thank you very much. We would like to have security guarantees on our pathway to NATO. We do not know when exactly we're going to make it there. It's not up to Ukraine at the moment. Ukraine has shown its strength on the battlefield, and it also showed that our public supports it. Regarding challenges, we really need security guarantees. We are negotiating that with the EU countries, with the UK, with the United States of America. So this is the circle of those that we've talked about it at the moment. When that is going to happen, I do not know. Мы Украина. Mr. President, the stolen childhood, the kidnapped children were already discussed today, and I would like to talk about family. This year has changed a lot for millions of families, and it probably affected your family as well. First Lady has been referred to by international observers as a symbol of resilience, and her voice is heard at various international platforms. So my question is, how did this 365 days of full-scale invasion change your relations with your family? If you could answer that. This is the last question, so I would really like to hear something about something personal. The final question and the hardest one. I love them. I love my family. I love my wife. My children are the most important people for me. I do not get to see them often. My parents, I don't have any opportunities to see them. I'm very proud of my wife. I know what kind of person she is, and I know that she is doing everything she can for the sake of children and the country, and of course it's a great thing for her to do something for the sake of me. Well, on a joking note, they're all in my heart, of course. And I was actually honest with you when I said that this is the hardest question, and I'm having a hard time finding words. The most important thing is not to let them down. The most important thing is to make sure that my children are proud of me. And I am happy that they're in Ukraine, that they go to Ukrainian universities. It is very important for a president of Ukraine, for the incumbent president or for the previous president. When you're a president of a country in war, you have to be here because the men and women are dying here, and it's important for your wife and your children to be here. I cannot order them to be here. What's important is that they are this kind of people, and I'm very lucky to have this family and this country. I can see there are a lot of questions, but unfortunately 2.5 hours were not enough to address all of the questions. But this has been a very hard week and a very hard day, so we have to wrap up now. Thank you, everyone.